In sense, a researcher, somebody who knows what they're looking for and knows how to go about finding
Well, I think we should forever be involved in research, because learning is a lifelong process. You never stop learning. Education means to draw out from within. We're drawing on an infinite source. We've got deep reservoirs of talent and ability within us. We can learn to do anything. We have phenomenal powers. If we used our body like we used our mind, we'd probably just move our little finger.
Okay. We don't exercise our mind enough.
No. But we're not taught to. Kids in school should be taught, before the school year ever starts, to sit down. They should be given a blank report card and get them to visualize the marks they want to get and write their own report card. This is before school starts, first week in school. And then the teacher should say, now I want you just to concentrate on how to get that mark, and I don't want you to think of why you can't. And I want you to form the attitude that you're going to get it. Now some people say that's not being realistic. That's being very realistic. That's following the success principles that go back 6,000 years in recorded history. That's how everything was accomplished.
That's not engaging in fantasy thinking, in
Hell,
wishful thinking, in daydreaming we talk about.
No. Well, that's where all greatness comes from. Greatness comes from fantasy. I would imagine that when Edison first saw the light bulb, he was fantasizing. But he kept fantasizing, and he built it into a theory, and then he built it into an image, and then he built it into a fact.
Ah.
I mean, when I was a kid, it was a fantasy to think of going to the moon.
Mm-hmm.
We've been up there with cars, playing golf.
Okay, you mentioned in terms of success principles, attitude, this business of attitude.
Attitude. It takes in the way you think, the way you feel, and the way you act. I'd have a difficult time really explaining attitude right just in a conversation. I use a board in the seminar, and I did an attitude seminar last night. We spent 3 hours dealing with that one subject, so to do it here in 3 minutes, I can do it. I haven't learned how yet.
Okay.
Let's put it that way.
I recognize it's difficult because we talk...
You have to have a winning attitude, though, Tom.
Okay. In human relations, we talk about the toughest thing with managing people. The toughest thing to deal with is their attitude.
That's right.
That's almost impossible.
And that's the one thing where management falls down.
But we can't change people's attitudes.
Well, nobody can change another person's attitude, and the only attitude we can change is our own. But you see, if management have the idea it's their attitude and we can't do anything about it, then they're not going to do anything about it. But if management arrive at the conclusion, yes, it is attitude, and let's teach the people something about attitude. Let's teach them something about themselves. Let's make them realize that they're worth something, that they're valuable, that the greatest resource we've got. Companies spend about 65% of every dollar that comes in goes back out on employees and wages and benefits, and yet management knows less about employees than anything else. They know more about the gadgets and the widgets than they do about the people.
Okay, so your suggestion is we develop a winning attitude.
Absolutely.
Can you define that for me, first of all? What is a winning attitude?
Well, if we can understand, let me digress for a second. The whole universe operates by laws, and there's a law of opposites. It's called the law of polarity. Everything has its opposite. There's a right and a left side. Mm-hmm. There's a front and a back, an up and a down, a hot and a cold, positive and negative, yin the yang. Well, you can think negative or you can think positive, but you can't think both at the same time. You're only going to think one way at one time. And we have to train our mind to think or look for the positive or the good in things. There's good in everything. There's no such thing as no good.
Car broke down on the way over to the station.
There's something good about it. There's something good about it. Now, you may have to look to find out what it is.
Okay.
Yeah. But there's something good in everything. There has to be a positive and a negative for anything to exist. There's a law of gender that decrees that. Science understands it. It's taught in science.
Okay.
Well, once we understand that there's this law of opposites, there's negative thoughts or positive thoughts. As the thought energy flows into our mind, we decide what we're going to think. A person's out of work. They can decide to think, I can't find a job, but they can decide to think, I can. If they're thinking, I'm going to find one, then they'll start attracting a train of thought to them, figuring out how to find it. You really have to understand how your conscious and your subconscious mind works in relation to your body or your physical world to understand attitude. Attitude should be taught as a subject in school ahead of reading, writing, arithmetic, or anything else. Because it's a person's attitude that's going to determine the marks they get.
Okay, and maybe part of attitude or related to attitude is this business of self-image, which you talked about.
Yeah. Well, that would, like we were talking about success principles, and I was saying you got to get the winning attitude, you've got to set a goal. Then you have to work on self-image. Now, when we think, we build images in our mind. Dr. Maxwell Maltz discovered the self-image concept as we know it today. In 1960, he was a plastic surgeon. And he realized he was operating on people. He may removed a nasty scar from their face. And he noticed sometimes when he removed the scar or maybe did a nose job on them or something, there was a great psychological change took place in the person. Where they may have been introverted, they started to become very gregarious and outgoing. And he postulated that there must be two images that we have, an exterior image, and we also have an inner self-image. And he started to study this, and he wrote a magnificent book on it called Psycho-Cybernetics. And psycho-cybernetics, psycho being the mind, cybernetics being the science of control and communication. And he goes into this, and he explains how every one of us has an image in our mind of ourself. And it's called a self-image. Too many people don't know much about themselves, and so they don't have a very good image of themselves. And you'll often notice that people will shy away from you. They won't look you in the eye. They'll look down or look up. They'll never try to do anything of any great consequence because they don't think they can. They have a poor self-image.
Okay. Part of that is because through school we're told about what we don't do well. We failed here, we had low grades, or
that
we
could
only
be part
got
of it.
60%
Yeah.
or whatever. Okay.
Yeah. I think there's been a great disservice done with the IQ test in that respect when you're bringing out school. Binet, the Frenchman, back around the turn of the century, invented the IQ test, and then we brought it over from Stanford over here, and we'll test a person's intellect, and then we'll brand them good, bad, smart, not, and that's not true. We can change IQs by changing self-images. But yes, if we're told we're not very good, you're just like your dad, you're a bum, you're never going to do well, you didn't go to school, you can't win.
Okay.
Well, that's all false. We can do anything, and we should be encouraging a child. Give them a pat on the back rather than a kick.
Okay, what can we do? Members of our viewing audience right now, most of us walk around with some degree of a self-image. Is that fair to say?
We all have a self-image.
Okay, would you say most of us have a negative self-image to some degree?
Well, let's say we can all improve our self-image.
Okay.
I don't care how good your image is, you can improve it.
Okay, how can we improve it? Something specific. How can we go about making our self-image more positive?
Well, again, you're getting into a whole day seminar. If I could give you just a simple tip on it, if a person would sit down and let their body relax, totally relax,
Okay.
and then start to visualize in their mind, see themselves the way they want to see themselves.
Which may take a good deal of thought, since we're not
Well, you
sure if that
relax,
occurs.
yeah. And
I mean, in terms of how we want to see ourselves. Maybe we don't know how we want to.
relate it to something specific.
Somebody we admire, maybe, or
Possibly.
somewhere we'd like to see ourselves down the road. Okay.
Yeah, see how you'd like to live your life. See yourself living it that way.
Okay.
Now, understand that that's a picture in your mind. When you pick up a book, the book is nothing but a picture that an author has painted in words. Van Gogh, the great artist, was asked one time how he did such beautiful work. He said, I dream my painting, and then I paint my dream. They get the picture on the mind, and then paint it on the wall, or on the canvas. Well, if we would relax and build the image in our mind of how we'd like to see ourselves, how we'd like to see ourselves acting in life, relating to other people, our social life, see ourselves in the position we hold, or how we make our sales presentations if we happen to be in selling or something, and then take that picture and describe it, write it out in the present tense. I am so happy now that I see myself, and write it out. Now, a lot of people will laugh at this and say, that doesn't make any sense. It makes a lot of sense. They can't tell you why it doesn't. I could spend hours telling you why it does, and I could explain it in such detail that everyone would understand it. But write out a description of how you'd like to see yourself. Start to read it, and read it, and read it, and read it every day. Carry it around and keep reading it. The one point that all the great teachers, all down through history, have all agreed on, they've been in complete unanimous agreement on it, we become what we think about. Now, it may be fantasy at first, it might even appear to us as being a lie. But if you read it often enough, you'll start to believe it. And when William James said, believe and your belief will create the fact, you will see the person's personality change. I watch people in the seminars, personality change right in front of my eyes. And all they're doing is starting to see themselves different. They're starting to think different thoughts.
So our thoughts control our actions?
Oh, there's no question about it. No, our thoughts control our feelings.
Okay.
Our feelings control our actions.
All right. And we control our thoughts.
Absolutely.
Or we can control our
We can
thoughts.
control our thoughts, yes.
Generally, though, one of our difficulties, one of our problems maybe is that we tend to react to what
we
other
do.
people tell us, and we consequently get the negative thoughts, and then that affects our feelings, and then that affects our behavior.
That's right. That's exactly the way it is. We read the newspaper. Doom and gloom's coming. We just accept it. Doom and gloom doesn't have to be coming. Do you know there's always been a depression for some people? I grew up with the idea that everybody went broke in the 30s. They didn't. Some made millions. I thought everybody went out of business. They didn't. Some people went into business. There's always a depression for some people, and there's always good times for others. Let's ask ourselves when we read something in the paper, do I want to get emotionally involved in that idea? If it's a negative idea, I don't want to get emotionally involved with it. I don't read the paper that often. I do, but I don't dwell on it.
You don't get emotionally involved in it when you see other
When
negative.
an idea comes into your mind, whether somebody else tells you or whether you read it in the paper, we should reason with it. Ask ourselves, will that idea help me get to where I want to go? If it won't, reject the idea.
Okay. All right. Bob, I appreciate it. Our half hour's gone by already.
Went fast.